Rain lashed against the tall windows of the Silverfang throne room, like angry claws trying to tear their way inside. Lightning split the sky beyond the glass, casting sharp shadows across the marble floor where Lysa stood alone before the raised dais. Her hands rested protectively over the gentle swell of her belly, hidden beneath the simple gray cloak she had chosen that morning. She had come here hoping for truth, for the man she loved to see her. Instead, the air felt thick with accusation. The elder council sat in their carved seats flanking the throne, their robes heavy with gold thread and older secrets. Chief Advisor Varen leaned forward, his voice smooth as polished stone. He held up a sealed parchment, its wax stamped with the royal crest. "This document proves what we have long suspected, Your Majesty. The Omega Lysa claims to carry your heir, yet our healers and seers have examined the signs. There is no true bond here, only a clever deception meant to secure her place. She seeks to weaken the throne with false blood." Whispers rippled through the assembled nobles like wind through dry leaves. Lysa kept her chin high, her silver-flecked eyes fixed on the king who had once whispered promises to her under the moonlight. Davis sat upon the throne, his broad shoulders rigid beneath the fur-lined mantle of office. His dark hair caught the torchlight, and the strong line of his jaw was set in the way she knew meant he was wrestling with doubt. She had felt his wolf stir within him many nights, drawn to her as the mate bond sang between them. Now that same bond seemed to crack under the weight of the council's words. "Your Majesty," she said quietly, her voice steady though her heart hammered. "I have never lied to you. The child is yours. The bond we share is real. I felt it the first time our hands touched in the garden, and I feel it still. Why would I risk everything for a falsehood?" Varen's smile was thin. "The council has records, my lady. Ancient laws speak of Omegas who have tried this before, using potions and charms to mimic the signs of pregnancy. We cannot allow such trickery to endanger the succession. The kingdom demands certainty." Davis's fingers tightened on the arms of the throne. For a moment his gaze softened as it met hers, and she saw the flicker of the man who had once pulled her close after a long hunt, telling her she was the only peace his beast had ever known. But the council had spent weeks planting seeds of fear, whispers of weakness, whispers of prophecy. A false Luna would bring ruin, they had warned him. A child born under doubt would fracture the pack. Davis had listened. He always listened when the weight of the crown pressed hardest. "Enough," he said at last, his voice low and carrying the growl of his wolf. "The bond is broken by your own actions, Lysa. If this child is truly mine, the moon goddess would have shown clearer signs. I will not risk the throne on uncertainty. You are hereby banished from Silverfang lands. Leave tonight, before the storm worsens, and do not return." The words landed like the thunder outside. Lysa felt them strike deep, but she did not flinch. She did not beg. She had known this moment might come the day the council began watching her with colder eyes. Instead, she simply nodded once, the movement small and dignified. "As you wish, my king." She turned without another word. The nobles parted for her, their eyes heavy with judgment or pity or secret satisfaction. One young attendant reached out as if to steady her, but Lysa walked past with her back straight. The heavy doors of the throne room swung open, and the storm rushed in, carrying the sharp scent of wet pine and earth. Cold droplets stung her face as she stepped onto the wide stone steps leading down into the courtyard. Behind her, Davis rose halfway from the throne, one hand extended before he caught himself. His wolf howled inside his chest, frantic and confused. But the council's voices filled his ears again, reminding him of duty and legacy. He sank back down, watching her silhouette grow smaller against the driving rain. Lysa pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. The wind whipped her dark hair across her face, and she tasted salt that might have been rain or tears. She had loved him fiercely, had given him every quiet moment of devotion a fated mate could offer. In the hidden hours between court and duty, he had been hers completely. Now those memories felt like shards of glass beneath her feet. Yet beneath the pain, something else stirred. A faint warmth against her wrist where a delicate silver mark had appeared months ago, unnoticed by anyone but her. It pulsed once, like a heartbeat, as lightning flashed again. She paused at the edge of the courtyard where the path turned toward the outer gates. One hand pressed to her belly, feeling the small flutter of life within. "My child," she whispered into the storm, her voice lost beneath the roar of wind and rain. "No matter what they say, you are wanted. You are loved. I will keep you safe even if it means walking into the dark alone." The gates groaned open under the watch of silent guards. Beyond them lay the wild borderlands, miles of forest and mountain where no one would think to look for a banished Omega. Lysa did not glance back at the palace windows where she knew Davis still watched. She stepped forward, boots sinking into mud, and let the night swallow her whole. Inside the throne room, the torches guttered in the sudden draft. Davis remained seated, staring at the empty space where she had stood. The council exchanged satisfied glances, but he felt only the first cold touch of something he could not yet name. Regret, perhaps, or the beginning of a void that would widen with every passing season. The storm howled on, carrying away the woman who had once been his peace. And the kingdom settled into an uneasy silence, as if the very stones knew a fracture had begun. Far down the road, Lysa kept walking, one foot in front of the other, the silver mark on her wrist glowing faintly beneath her sleeve like a promise the moon goddess had not yet finished writing. The child inside her shifted again, and for the first time since the rejection she allowed herself a single, quiet breath of resolve. Whatever came next, she would face it not as the broken mate they believed her to be, but as the mother who would ensure their son lived to see the truth. The rain never stopped that night. The storm did not ease as Lysa left the palace gates behind her. Rain hammered the narrow path that wound away from the Silverfang capital, turning the dirt to slick clay that clung to her boots and made every step a battle. She kept one hand pressed firmly over the curve of her belly, shielding the life inside from the cold that seeped through her soaked cloak. The wind whipped her hair across her face, stinging her eyes, but she did not stop. She could still feel the weight of Davis' gaze on her back from the throne room window. That final moment when he had almost risen, almost called her name. Almost. The word tasted like ash on her tongue. Hours blurred into one long, aching march. The palace lights faded behind the trees until only darkness and thunder remained. Her body protested with every mile, sharp cramps twisting low in her back, but she whispered soft promises to the child. "You are not a deception. You are not unwanted. I will find us a place where the council's lies cannot reach you." The silver mark on her wrist glowed faintly beneath the sleeve, a quiet warmth that kept her moving when her legs wanted to give out. She did not know what it meant, only that it had appeared the first time the baby kicked, as if the moon goddess had left her a secret sign no one else could see. By the time the sky began to lighten, the borderlands opened before her, wild and unforgiving. Jagged hills rolled into thick forests, and scattered cottages hugged the edges of the land where Silverfang rule grew thin. Lysa's strength finally failed near a narrow stream. She sank to her knees beside an old wooden cabin, its roof moss-covered and its door hanging slightly crooked. Smoke curled from the chimney, and the scent of herbs drifted on the wind. She knocked once, then twice, her voice hoarse. "Please, I need shelter." The door creaked open. An elderly woman stood there, her silver hair braided tight and her eyes sharp with the wisdom of many seasons. She took one look at Lysa's drenched form and the protective hand on her belly, and her expression softened. "Come inside, child. No questions tonight." The healer, Mira, guided her to a simple cot by the fire. She stripped away the wet cloak, wrapped Lysa in dry wool, and pressed a warm cup of tea into her trembling hands. "You are far from home, but you are safe here." The labor began before dawn the next morning. Pain rolled through Lysa in waves, fierce and unrelenting. but she gripped Myra's hand and breathed through it. Sweat beaded on her forehead as she pushed, silent tears mixing with the effort. She thought of Davis in those long moments, of the way he had once traced gentle circles on her back when she was tired, of the private laughter they had shared away from the court. Those memories hurt worse than the contractions. Yet each wave of pain brought her closer to the only thing that mattered now. When the final push came and the baby's cry filled the small cabin, Lysa reached for him with shaking arms. Myra placed the newborn on her chest, and the world narrowed to the tiny, perfect face. He was beautiful, dark hair like his father's, but his eyes, when they opened, shone with a rare, luminous silver that caught the firelight like polished moonstone. Lysa's breath caught. Those eyes. She had seen them in Davis during full moons, when his wolf rose close to the surface. She named him Kaelen, a name that meant steadfast light in the old tongue of the border packs. It felt right. It felt like defiance. Myra helped clean and swaddle him, then left them in quiet peace while she prepared broth and bread. Lysa held her son through the long hours that followed, feeding him, rocking him, memorizing every small sound he made. The loneliness pressed in, heavy as the storm clouds outside. But Kaelen's warmth against her heart pushed it back. Days turned into weeks in the borderlands. Lysa stayed with Myra in the hidden cottage, helping with herbs and simple healing to earn their keep. She never spoke of the palace or the king. To the few travelers who passed through, she was simply a widow seeking quiet. She kept her head down and her stories short. Yet at night, when the village slept, she would sit by the window with Kaelen in her arms and tell him soft tales of a father who ruled with strength and honor, even if that father had cast them out. He does not know you yet, my love, but one day the truth will find him. Until then, I am enough for both of us. Kaelen grew quickly, his silver eyes bright and curious. He reached for the moonlight that spilled across the floorboards. And sometimes the beams seemed to linger on his skin, as if answering him. Lysa noticed other small wonders too. When the baby fussed at night, a faint protective glow would shimmer around the cottage walls, soft and silver like her wrist mark. It kept the wolves at a respectful distance and warmed the air when frost crept in. She did not speak of it to Myra, but the old healer would sometimes glance at the glow and smile knowingly, as though she understood more than she let on. One evening, as Lysa rocked Kaelen to sleep, the distant sound of howling carried on the wind. Palace wolves. She recognized the deep, resonant tone that had once echoed through the throne room halls. Her heart clenched. Was Davis out there searching? Had regret finally cracked the pride that ruled him? The howls rose and fell, full of longing that mirrored her own hidden pain. For a moment she closed her eyes and let herself remember his voice saying her name like a prayer. Then Kaelen stirred in her arms, his small hand closing around her finger, and she opened her eyes again. She turned away from the window, steeling her shoulders. The howls faded into the night, but she did not follow them with her heart. She had chosen this path for her son's sake, and she would walk it with dignity, no matter how many nights the palace wolves called. The borderlands held them in their quiet embrace, but the silver mark on Lysa's wrist continued to pulse stronger now, as if the moon goddess was not finished weaving their fate. Kaelen's eyes caught the light once more, shining with that impossible silver. And Lysa knew in her bones that the child they had tried to deny was already becoming something the kingdom could never ignore. The years ahead would test her, but in this small cottage, with her son safe against her chest, she felt the first quiet bloom of strength. She had been banished, yet she had not been broken. The days after the banishment settled over the Silverfang palace like a shroud. Davis moved through the grand halls with the same measured stride that had once made enemies tremble, yet the weight of the crown pressed heavier now. The throne room felt vast and hollow, its high ceilings swallowing every footfall. He had not slept soundly since that storm night. His wolf stirred inside him at odd hours, restless and growling low, as though searching for something the king could no longer name. Servants bowed lower than usual, sensing the shift in their ruler. But none dared speak of the Omega who had once walked these corridors with quiet grace. In the quiet hours before dawn, memories returned unbidden. Davis found himself standing at the tall window overlooking the royal gardens. The same place where he and Lysa had stolen their first private moments many moons ago. He remembered the night the mate bond had fully awakened between them. The air had been warm with summer blooms, moonlight silvering the leaves. She had reached for his hand without hesitation, her touch steady despite the difference in their ranks. "You carry the weight of an entire kingdom on your shoulders," she had whispered, her voice soft as falling petals. "Let me help you bear it, even if only for a little while." He had pulled her close then, breathing in the scent of wild herbs and moonlight that clung to her skin. And for those stolen hours the crown had felt lighter. She had listened as he spoke of the endless treaties and the fear that one wrong choice could fracture the Pax. In her arms he had not been the feared Alpha King. He had simply been Davis, a man who longed for peace. Those memories clashed sharply with the present. The Elder Council had summoned him to the council chamber that very morning, their robes rustling like dry leaves as they arranged themselves around the long oak table. Chief Advisor Varen led the discussion, his tone measured but insistent. "The kingdom requires stability, Your Majesty. The banishment was necessary, yet the Pax grow restless without a clear line of succession. We have received offers from the Eastern Ridge Alliance. Their princess carries strong bloodlines and proven fertility. A political union would secure our borders and quiet any whispers of weakness." Davis listened, his jaw tight. The words felt like chains tightening around his chest. He had banished Lysa to protect the throne, yet every alliance they proposed now tasted like ash. He remembered another private moment, weeks before the storm, when Lysa had found him alone in the war room after a long day of strategy. She had brought him a simple meal of bread and venison, setting it before him without fanfare. "You do not have to carry this alone," she had said, her eyes meeting his with a calm that cut through his exhaustion. "The bond between us is not weakness. It is the one thing the council cannot command." He had kissed her then, fierce and grateful, believing her words with every beat of his heart. Now those same words haunted him. The council spoke of strength through alliance. Yet he could not shake the image of her walking into the rain without once begging for mercy. As the meeting continued, Varen unrolled fresh maps and pointed to border treaties that needed sealing. The other elders nodded in agreement, their voices overlapping in careful harmony. "We must act swiftly," they urged. Rumors already spread among the outer Pax that the king hesitates. A new Luna would silence them. Davis felt his wolf bristle, the beast pushing against his control with a surge of frustration. He silenced the animal with effort, nodding once to the council. "Prepare the documents. I will review them tonight." Yet even as he agreed, the first faint signs of unrest began to show in the kingdom. Reports arrived from the western fields that the harvest had begun to wither under an unseasonable frost, leaves curling black at the edges despite clear skies. In the training yards, the royal wolves grew agitated during drills, snapping at handlers and refusing commands they had followed for years. Davis dismissed the accounts as coincidence, yet deep down a quiet sorrow bloomed. He had believed banishing Lysa would restore order. Instead, the palace corridors felt colder, the torchlight dimmer, as though the very stones missed her steady presence. Later that evening, in a shadowed alcove off the main council chamber, the elders gathered without the king. Varen stood before a small brazier, an ancient scroll clutched in his hands. The parchment was yellowed with age, its edges frayed, and the ink spoke of prophecies long forgotten. "Silver-eyed heirs shall rise when the true Luna is denied," it read in faded script. "The child will carry the old blood and mend what pride has broken." Varen's lips curled in disdain. This nonsense must not reach the king. He has made his choice. The kingdom's future lies with us, not some banished Omega's lies. With a deliberate motion, he fed the scroll into the flames. The paper curled and blackened, sparks rising like dying stars. The other elders watched in silence, their faces illuminated by the fire's glow. One younger advisor shifted uneasily, but said nothing. "The matter is closed," Varen declared. "Any further talk of this bloodline will be treated as treason." They dispersed into the night, leaving only ash behind. Davis, unaware of the burning, walked the empty corridors alone after the evening meal. His wolf paced harder now, claws scraping against the inside of his mind, urging him toward the gardens where Lysa's scent still lingered faintly on the night breeze. He paused at the entrance to the throne room, the great doors standing open. The chamber was dark save for a single torch flickering near the dais. He stepped inside and stopped before the throne, his gaze falling on the empty space at the foot of the steps where Lysa had stood that final night. The question formed slowly, heavy as the crown he wore. What if the storm that night had not been sent to punish her, but to reveal something the council refused to see? He shook his head, pushing the thought away, yet it remained. A single crack in the wall of certainty he had built. The wolf inside him howled once, low and mournful, echoing through the silent hall. Davis stood there a long moment, the weight of the crown heavier than ever, before turning away into the darkness. The borderlands had changed little in the 6 years since Lysa first arrived under cover of storm and heartbreak. The small village of Eldridge nestled between rolling hills and ancient pines, its cottages clustered like wary travelers around a central well. Smoke rose steadily from stone chimneys, carrying the scent of baking bread and drying herbs. Life here moved at a slower rhythm than the grand halls of Silverfang, and Lysa had learned to match it. She had become the village healer, her hands steady with poultices and tinctures, her voice calm when fevers burned or bones ached. No one asked about her past. They simply called her the quiet woman from the north, and that suited her well. Each morning she rose before the sun, braiding her dark hair with the same quiet dignity she had carried through the palace gates on the night of her banishment. Kaelen, now 6 summers old, still slept soundly in the small room they shared at the back of Myra's cottage. Lysa would pause in the doorway and watch him, her heart swelling with a warmth that pushed back the lingering shadows of the past. His dark hair curled against the pillow exactly as his father's had once done. But those silver eyes, when they opened, held a light that belonged only to him. She never spoke of Davis aloud, yet the ache remained, a quiet companion that surfaced in the still hours before dawn. She wondered sometimes if the king ever walked the same gardens they once shared, if his wolf still howled into the night searching for what he had cast away. Then she would shake her head and turn to the day's work, refusing to let memory weaken her. Kaelen was already awake this morning, sitting cross-legged on the wooden floor with a small wooden wolf carving in his hands. He looked up at her with that bright, knowing gaze. "Mother," he said softly, "the wolves in my dream bowed again last night. They were big and silver, like the moon itself. They waited for me to tell them where to go." His words sent a faint shiver across her skin. She knelt beside him, brushing a curl from his forehead. "Dreams are strange gifts, my love. Perhaps they mean you have a strong heart." He smiled, the expression so pure it made her chest tighten with both joy and sorrow. He had her gentle nature, yet there was an intuition in him that went beyond any child's ordinary play. Yesterday, he had found a lost lamb in the thicket before anyone else noticed it missing, guided only by what he called a pulling feeling in his chest. The village stirred around them as they stepped outside. Lysa carried her basket of dried herbs and salves toward the central square, where those in need often waited. Kaelen walked beside her, his small hand in hers, his steps light and sure on the uneven path. He had grown strong in ways that sometimes startled the other children. Last week he had lifted a fallen beam from a collapsed shed without strain, his small arms steady while grown men grunted with effort. The villagers had laughed it off as the vigor of youth. But Lysa had seen the faint silver glow that flickered across his skin for just a moment afterward, gone before anyone else could notice. She kept such moments secret. tucking them away like the silver mark that still warmed her wrist on certain nights. Today a traveler arrived at the square, slumped over his horse with a deep gash along his side from a bandit's blade. The man groaned as two villagers helped him down, blood staining the ground. Lysa moved quickly, spreading a clean cloth on the bench near the well. "Lie still," she told him gently, her voice carrying the same steady calm that had once soothed Davis after long hunts. She cleaned the wound with cool spring water, then applied a thick layer of her special salve made from moonflower and silverroot. The traveler hissed in pain at first, then sighed as her fingers worked. The bleeding slowed almost at once. He blinked up at her in surprise. "Your touch," he murmured. "It feels like moonlight on a fevered brow. I have traveled many roads, but never felt healing like this." Kaelen stood nearby, watching with wide eyes. He stepped closer without being asked and placed his small palm lightly on the man's shoulder. The traveler's breathing eased further, the lines of pain smoothing from his face. Lysa's heart skipped. She had seen this before in her son, this quiet ability to calm what others could not. The wound began to knit together faster than any ordinary remedy should allow, the edges pulling closed as though guided by an unseen hand. The traveler sat up straighter after only a few minutes, flexing his side with wonder. "I feel whole again. Thank you, both of you." He pressed a small coin into her palm, but Lysa shook her head. "Keep it for your journey home. Healing is not for trade here." As the man rode away, stronger than when he arrived, the villagers murmured their thanks and drifted back to their tasks. Lysa turned to Kaelen, kneeling so their eyes met. "You helped him," she said softly. "How did you know what to do?" He shrugged, his silver gaze steady. "The wolves in my dreams told me. They said the light inside me knows the way." She pulled him into a gentle embrace, hiding the way her own mark pulsed warmly in response. Pride and fear mingled in her chest. This child carried something ancient, something the council had tried to deny before he was even born. She had raised him with stories of strength and kindness, teaching him to listen to the quiet voice within. But she had never expected the whispers to grow so clear. Later that afternoon, while Kaelen played near the edge of the forest with other village children, Lysa tended her herb garden behind the cottage. The sun filtered through the pines, warming her shoulders. She allowed herself a rare moment of quiet hope. Life here was simple, safe. Kaelen laughed freely, and the borderlands had become their sanctuary. Yet the ache for what might have been never fully left her. In the deepest part of her heart, she still saw Davis's face on the night he had sent her away, the conflict in his eyes that he had refused to name. She wondered if he had found the peace he sought without her, or if the kingdom had begun to feel the absence she had once filled in silence. A distant sound pulled her from her thoughts. Hoofbeats approached along the main road, steady and purposeful. Kaelen ran back to her side, his small hand gripping hers. "Mother," he whispered, his voice tight with that same intuition. "Strangers are coming. Wolves with crowns on their collars." She looked toward the road and felt her stomach tighten. A small patrol of riders crested the hill, their cloaks bearing the silver wolf emblem of Silverfang. They were border scouts, their armor polished and their expressions watchful. They reined in near the square, one of them calling out to a villager. "We seek any sign of ancient bloodlines in these parts. Unusual markings, silver eyes in children, or strange healings. The king commands it." Lysa's breath caught. She pulled Kaelen closer, shielding him with her body as the scouts began asking questions door to door. The silver mark on her wrist flared hot beneath her sleeve, and she saw Kaelen's eyes catch the sunlight, shining with that impossible inner light. The riders had not noticed them yet, but they were drawing closer, their search unknowingly pulling the past straight toward the small family she had built in exile. For the first time in years, the quiet life she had guarded so carefully trembled on the edge of change. Inside the council chamber, the air hung thick with the scent of burning herbs and old parchment. Torches flickered along the stone walls, casting long shadows that seemed to lean in like eager listeners. Chief Advisor Varen stood at the head of the long oak table, his fingers drumming a slow rhythm against the polished wood. The other elders sat in their usual places, their faces carved with practiced concern. They had gathered without the king again this time to sharpen the blades of their influence before the next audience. The kingdom stirs with dangerous talk. Varen began, his voice low and measured. Whispers from the outer packs claim the throne grows weak without a true Luna at its side. Crops fail in the west, and the royal wolves grow restless in the yards. We must act before these rumors become rebellion. He unrolled a fresh map across the table, marking the eastern borders with a decisive tap. The alliance with Ridgehold offers everything we need. Their princess is strong-blooded and untouched by scandal. A marriage would secure trade routes and silence any doubt about the succession. The elders nodded in unison, their agreement flowing like a well-rehearsed current. One of them, an older man with a thin beard, cleared his throat. The people remember the banished Omega, they say. Some still cling to foolish tales of a silver-eyed child. We cannot allow such stories to take root. Varen's eyes narrowed. Exactly. We have already begun spreading quieter words in the markets and among the servants. Welcome back to the Alpha King Rain channel. Today I'm bringing you a brand new and incredibly captivating story that will surely enthrall you if you listen to the whole video. The story is entirely fictional. The video is created using AI, and it's designed to provide value, entertainment, and positive education for viewers aged 13 and up. Now, let's dive into today's story. The Omega was a clever deceiver, nothing more. Her banishment saved the kingdom from false blood. The new alliance will prove the king's wisdom. He smiled then, but the expression never reached his eyes. And if any lingering proof surfaces, we will handle it as we always have, in silence. Unbeknownst to the council, Davis had already begun to feel the pressure they so carefully applied. He stood in the war room later that same afternoon, maps and reports scattered before him. His broad shoulders were tense beneath the royal mantle, and the lines around his eyes had deepened in the years since the storm. The wolf inside him paced more often now, its growls echoing in his chest during moments of quiet. He had tried to bury the memory of Lysa's steady gaze on the night he sent her away, but it returned. Unbidden, especially when the reports of failing harvests reached him. The council had assured him the kingdom would thrive without her, yet the land itself seemed to mourn. Varen entered then, accompanied by two other elders carrying sealed letters from the eastern court. "Your Majesty, the time has come to consider the future," they said in careful unison. "The princess arrives in 2 moons for the formal negotiations. Her dowry includes valuable alliances, and her bloodline is proven fertile." Davis stared at the letters, his jaw tightening. He remembered Lysa's touch, the way it had once calmed the beast within him without a single word. The mate bond had felt like truth, then unbreakable and pure. Now the council spoke of fertility and dowries as though love and fate were mere bargaining chips. He felt the first sharp edge of doubt slice through his pride. Was this strength, or simply the path of least resistance? "We must not delay," Varen pressed, leaning closer. "The packs watch you closely, my king. A decisive union will restore confidence." Davis nodded once, but the motion felt heavy. "Prepare the documents," he said, his voice carrying the weight of command. "I will review them by evening." The elders bowed and withdrew, but Varen lingered a moment longer, his expression one of feigned loyalty. "You chose wisely that night in the storm, Your Majesty. The kingdom owes you its stability." With that he left, leaving Davis alone with the maps and the growing hollow in his chest. Far from the palace, in the shadowed corridors beneath the council wing, a different kind of meeting took place. Varen gathered 3 trusted spies cloaked in plain traveler's garb, their faces hidden by hoods. "You will ride to the borderlands at once," he instructed, his tone sharp as a blade. "Seek any sign of the banished Omega or a child with silver eyes. If you find them, observe only. Do not approach. Report back every detail twisted to serve our purpose." The spies nodded, their loyalty bought long ago with gold and promises of rank. One of them, a wiry man named Torin with a scar across his cheek, slipped a small vial of colorless liquid into his belt. For silence if needed, he murmured. Varen's smile was cold. Use it only if the truth threatens to surface. The kingdom's peace depends on what the king never learns. The spies departed under cover of dusk, their horses swift and silent on the forest paths. Days later, Torin reached the village of Eldridge, blending easily among traders at the central square. He kept his hood low, listening to conversations while pretending to examine goods at the market stalls. Children played nearby, their laughter bright against the afternoon sun. Among them ran a small boy with dark curls and eyes that caught the light in an unusual way. Torin's gaze sharpened. The boy paused near a woman whose posture held the quiet grace of someone who had once walked greater halls. She was tending herbs, her movements careful and sure. "Mother," the boy called out, his voice carrying clearly on the breeze. "The wolves in my dreams bowed again today. They said my silver father would come when the moon calls loudest." The woman knelt quickly, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder and glancing around with quiet caution. Torin's heart beat faster. Silver father. He memorized the words, committing them to memory. The woman's wrist caught the light for a brief moment, revealing a faint mark that shimmered like moonlight on water. Torin slipped away into the crowd, his mind already crafting the report he would send. The child spoke of a silver father he would tell the council, but he would twist it carefully, claiming the boy raved of false prophecies and cursed blood meant to undermine the throne. The woman he would describe as a simple healer hiding dangerous secrets, perhaps even practicing forbidden charms to mimic royal traits. Back at the palace 2 days later, the council received the twisted message through a coded raven. Varen read it aloud in the private chamber, his voice laced with satisfaction. The border holds rumors of a silver-eyed boy and a woman who heals with unnatural speed. Clearly the work of charlatans seeking to stir unrest. We must act before these lies reach the king. The elders agreed with nods and murmurs. One suggested a border inspection disguised as a routine patrol. Varen's eyes gleamed. Yes, we will recommend it to His Majesty as a show of strength. The inspection will allow us to confirm and contain any threat. That evening in the throne room, Davis listened as Varen presented the idea with polished concern. Reports from the borders speak of growing unrest, Your Majesty. A small inspection party, led by your most trusted captains, would reassure the outer packs and show the strength of the crown. Davis considered the words, his wolf stirring uneasily once more. The thought of riding out himself flickered through his mind unbidden, as though some deeper instinct pulled him toward the wild lands. He had not left the capital in months, preferring the safety of stone walls and familiar routines. Yet the restlessness in his chest would not quiet. "Very well," he said at last, his voice steady. "Prepare the patrol. I will lead it myself." The council masked their surprise with bows, but inside Varen felt a flicker of unease. The king's decision to go personally was unexpected, yet it could still serve their purpose. As long as the truth remained twisted and buried, the alliance would proceed, and the throne would stay under their quiet control. Davis dismissed them and stood alone once more, staring out the tall windows toward the distant horizon. The borderlands lay far beyond his sight, yet for the first time in years, he felt the faint pull of something unresolved calling across the miles. Unaware that the inspection he had just approved would lead him straight into the heart of the secret he had tried so hard to forget. The border outpost at Eldridge stirred with unusual activity as the royal patrol crested the final hill. Dust rose from the hooves of 20 mounted wolves and their riders, the silver emblem of Silverfang gleaming on every cloak. Davis rode at the head, his tall frame straight in the saddle. The weight of the crown replaced for this journey by a simpler traveling mantle that still carried the unmistakable aura of command. 6 years had etched subtle lines at the corners of his eyes, yet his presence commanded silence the moment the villagers caught sight of him. Whispers spread like wind through dry grass. The king himself had come. Not since the old treaties had anyone of his rank ridden this far. He reined in his stallion at the edge of the central square, the same square where Lysa had healed the traveler only days before. The air carried the scent of pine and fresh bread, but beneath it Davis felt something sharper. A pull in his chest that made his wolf lift its head and sent the breeze with sudden intensity. The beast had grown restless during the long ride, pacing harder with every mile closer to the borderlands. Now it pressed against his ribs as if trying to break free and run ahead. Davis scanned the gathered faces, his dark gaze steady yet shadowed by the quiet doubts that had begun to haunt his nights back at the palace. The council had framed this inspection as routine strength, but something deeper had urged him to lead it personally. Villagers bowed low, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and unease. Children peeked from behind skirts and doorways, drawn by the sight of the armored riders. Among them Kaelen stood half hidden near the well, his small hand gripping a wooden wolf carving he had been playing with moments earlier. The boy's silver eyes lifted and locked onto the king without hesitation. Time seemed to slow. Davis felt the breath catch in his throat. Those eyes, they mirrored the rare lunar silver that had marked his own lineage for generations. The same shade that appeared in his reflection during full moons when his wolf rose closest to the surface. The child could not be more than 6 summers old, yet the resemblance struck like a blade between the ribs. Davis' wolf howled inside him, a sound filled with recognition and raw confusion. The boy tilted his head slightly, as though listening to something no one else could hear. A faint pull tugged at his chest, warm and familiar, like the dreams of bowing wolves that had visited him since he could remember. For a heartbeat Kaelen took a single step toward the mounted king, his small feet moving almost on their own. Davis leaned forward in the saddle without thinking, one gloved hand tightening on the reins. "Who are you, child?" The question burned unspoken on his tongue. The square held its breath. Guards shifted uneasily behind him, sensing the shift in their ruler's demeanor. Then Kaelen turned. His gaze found Lysa where she stood at the edge of the herb garden, her basket still in her arms and her dark hair catching the afternoon light. The boy broke into a run, his voice ringing clear and bright across the quiet square. "Mother!" he called out, the word carrying on the breeze like a thunderclap in Davis' ears. "Look, the big wolves came just like in my dreams." Lysa stepped forward instinctively, her posture straight and calm despite the storm that erupted inside her. She set the basket down with deliberate care and opened her arms to catch her son as he reached her. Her silver-flecked eyes lifted then and met Davis' across the distance. The world narrowed to that single locked gaze. 6 years of silence, of rain-soaked nights and hidden strength, of raising a child the kingdom had tried to erase. All of it crashed between them in the space of a heartbeat. Davis felt the color drain from his face. His wolf surged forward so violently that he had to grip the saddle to stay mounted. Lysa. The name echoed through him like the first crack of the storm that had taken her away. She was alive. She was here. And the boy clinging to her waist, the one with eyes that matched his own, had just called her mother in front of every guard and villager. Shock rooted him in place. The council's words from that long-ago night replayed in his mind, twisted now by the living proof standing before him. False pregnancy, deception, threat to the throne. He had believed them. He had sent her into the storm carrying his child, and she had survived. Had built a life in the very borderlands he had come to inspect. Regret began to build like a slow tide, rising from the depths where he had buried it for years. His hands trembled slightly on the reins. The wolf inside him whined, pressing against his control with a desperation he had never felt before. This was no deception. This was the mate bond he had shattered, now staring back at him through the eyes of a son he had never known. Villagers murmured, their heads turning from the king to the quiet healer and the boy who looked so unmistakably royal. Guards exchanged uneasy glances, one of them whispering to another about the silver eyes that could not be ignored. Davis dismounted slowly, his boots hitting the ground with a heavy thud that echoed his pounding heart. He took a single step forward, then another, drawn by a force stronger than pride or crown. Lysa did not move. She held Kaelen close, her hand resting protectively on his dark curls. But her gaze remained steady on the man who had once been her everything. No plea crossed her lips. No accusation. Only the quiet dignity that had carried her through banishment and birth and 6 long years of solitude. The boy peeked out from her side, studying the king with open curiosity. The same pull tugged at him again, stronger now, but he stayed anchored to his mother. Sensing the storm of emotions swirling in the air, Davis stopped a few paces away, close enough to see the faint silver mark on Lysa's wrist where her sleeve had shifted. The mark pulsed once, visible only to him in that moment, as if the moon goddess herself had chosen this reunion to reveal what had been hidden. In front of the gathered guards and villagers, Kaelen's earlier call still hung in the air like an unbreakable truth. Mother. The single word had just torn open the wound Davis had pretended did not exist. He stood frozen, the alpha king who had commanded armies and bent entire packs to his will, now facing the one consequence he could never banish. Lysa's eyes held his without flinching, and in that locked gaze the years of separation collapsed into a single, shattering moment. The patrol had come for inspection, but fate had delivered something far more dangerous. The truth had arrived, and it wore the face of a child who had just named the woman the king had tried to forget. The square fell into a stunned hush as Davis took another step closer, his boots stirring the dust at his feet. The afternoon sun slanted across the village, catching the silver emblem on his cloak and turning it into a blade of light. His wolf surged against the inside of his chest, desperate and frantic, pulling him toward the woman and child who stood only paces away. Lysa's gaze never wavered. She kept one arm around Kaelen's shoulders, her posture straight and unyielding. The same quiet dignity that had carried her into the storm 6 years earlier, now holding her steady before the king who had cast her out. Davis stopped a respectful distance away, though every instinct screamed to close the gap completely. His voice when it came was low and rough, carrying the weight of 6 years of buried questions. Lysa. The name left his lips like a prayer and wound at once. He glanced down at the boy whose small hand still clutched her skirt, those silver eyes lifting to meet his with open curiosity. Who is this child? Tell me the truth. Now. Kaelen tilted his head, studying the tall stranger with the same calm intuition that had guided him through dreams of bowing wolves. He did not shrink away. Instead, he stepped half in front of his mother as if to shield her, his voice clear and unafraid. I am Kaelen. Mother says I have the light of the old moon in me. The words hung in the air, simple and devastating. Davis felt them strike deep, cracking the last remnants of the certainty the council had fed him. He had denied the pregnancy. He had called it deception. Yet here stood living proof. A son with his own eyes and the faint scent of royal blood that no one could fake. Lysa placed a gentle hand on Kaelen's shoulder, drawing him back to her side without force. Her voice remained soft but carried the strength of someone who had walked through fire and emerged whole. He is my son, Your Majesty. The only truth I have ever spoken remains the same as it was that night in the throne room. I did not lie then, and I will not lie now. She offered no explanations, no pleas for forgiveness, no recounting of the lonely birth in the healer's cabin or the years of quiet sacrifice. She simply stood there, letting the silence speak for the pain she had carried alone. Davis's breath caught. Regret flooded him in a slow, crushing wave, heavier than any battlefield wound he had ever taken. He remembered the storm, the way her cloak had clung to her frame as she walked away without once looking back. He had watched from the window, telling himself duty demanded it, that the council's warnings protected the throne. Now those warnings tasted like poison on his tongue. His wolf whined low inside him, pressing against his ribs with a sorrow that mirrored his own. I sent you into the rain carrying my heir, he said, the words raw and unguarded. I believed them when they said it was false. I let pride blind me. His hand lifted slightly as if to reach for her, then fell back to his side. The villagers watched in rapt silence, their eyes darting between the king and the quiet healer who had tended their wounds for years. Kaelen looked up at his mother, sensing the storm of emotions around them. His small fingers tightened on her sleeve, and for a moment the silver in his eyes caught the sunlight in a way that made them shimmer faintly, like moonlight on still water. Davis noticed it immediately. The same impossible glow that had once marked his own lineage during ancient rituals. The boy carried the old blood. There could be no doubt. The realization tightened something painful in the king's chest. He had not only rejected his mate, he had denied his own son the name and protection that should have been his by right. From the edge of the square, one of the patrol guards shifted uneasily and slipped a small scroll from his belt. It was a coded message prepared in advance by the council's spies, the ones who had ridden ahead under Varen's orders. The guard passed it discreetly to the captain, who read it with a tightening jaw before signaling for a raven to be released toward the capital. The message was brief but urgent. Silver-eyed boy confirmed at Eldridge. Woman matches description of banished Omega. King has seen them both. Threat to succession imminent. The council must prepare containment before the truth spreads. Back at the palace, Varen would receive it within hours, his face draining of color as he gathered the elders in their shadowed chamber. Panic would ripple through them like fire through dry grass. Their carefully built web of lies, the forged documents, the burned prophecies, all of it now risked exposure because the king had chosen to lead the patrol himself. They would scramble to draft new decrees and false witnesses, but the damage had already begun. Davis ignored the subtle movements of his guards. His focus remained locked on Lysa and Kaelen. The mate bond he had tried to sever hummed between them now, faint but unmistakable, pulling at the edges of his control. He had spent years convincing himself the bond had been broken by duty. Standing here, he felt it stir awake like a beast roused from long sleep. "You raised him alone," he said quietly, the regret thickening his voice. "In these borderlands, with no title, no protection. I took everything from you that night." The words cost him, each one stripping away another layer of the pride that had ruled him for so long. Lysa met his gaze without anger or triumph. She had cried her tears in the quiet nights after Kaelen's birth, had whispered her pain to the moon when no one else could hear. Now she simply answered with the truth that had sustained her. "I raised him with the only things I had left, my king. Love and the vow I made to keep him safe. He knows stories of a father who rules with strength, but he has never needed a crown to feel worthy." Her hand rested on Kaelen's dark curls, steady and protective. The boy looked between them, his silver eyes shimmering again under the shifting light, as though something ancient inside him recognized the pull of the bond. Davis swallowed hard. The price of his betrayal stood before him in the form of a woman who had not broken and a child who carried the future of the kingdom in his veins. He felt the weight of every decision that had led to this moment, the council's whispers, his own fear of weakness, the storm that had swallowed her whole. Regret burned like a brand against his heart, overwhelming and unrelenting. Yet beneath it flickered the first spark of resolve. He would not repeat the mistake of that night. He would not turn away again. He turned to the captain of the guard, his voice carrying the full authority of the Alpha King. "Bring them both to the palace under my protection. Prepare horses and an escort. They travel with us at first light." The order was given without room for argument, yet his eyes returned to Lysa as he spoke, searching for any sign she might refuse. She stood firm, her expression calm. But inside her the silver mark on her wrist began to warm with a quiet warning. A faint protective glow stirred around Kaelen for the briefest moment, invisible to the others yet unmistakable to her. The magic she had kept hidden all these years sensed danger ahead. The same danger that had driven the council to act in shadows for so long. The palace held more than reunion. It held the eyes of those who would rather see them erased than allow the truth to rise. Davis extended a hand toward her, not in command but in quiet offering. "Come home, Lysa." Let me face what I have done." She did not take it yet, but she nodded once, the motion small and measured. For Kaelen's sake she would go, but the strength she had built in exile would not bend so easily. As the guards began to move, and the villagers whispered among themselves, the silver in the boy's eyes shimmered once more under the fading light. A silent promise that the heir the kingdom had tried to deny was already awakening something far older than any throne. The journey back to the Silverfang palace stretched across 2 full days of careful travel. Davis rode at the head of the escort with Lysa, and Kaelen placed safely in the center of the column, where no harm could reach them. He had given her a gentle mare and a smaller pony for the boy, yet his eyes returned to them constantly, as if afraid they might vanish into the forest again. Kaelen sat tall in his saddle, his small hands steady on the reins, and his silver eyes drinking in the passing hills with quiet wonder. Lysa kept her posture straight, her dark cloak drawn close against the evening chill. She spoke little, but every glance she gave her son carried the fierce protectiveness that had sustained them through exile. When the palace towers finally rose against the horizon, the great stone walls gleamed under the setting sun, as though the kingdom itself held its breath. Davis led them through the main gates without fanfare. Servants and guards bowed low, their murmurs rippling like wind through leaves. Whispers followed in their wake. The banished Omega had returned, and the child at her side bore the unmistakable mark of royal blood. Davis ignored the stares. He guided Lysa and Kaelen to a quiet wing of the palace away from the main court, where the air smelled of polished wood and fresh linens. "These chambers will be yours," he told her, his voice low and careful. "No one will disturb you here. Rest. We will speak when you are ready." Lysa nodded once, her expression calm, though her heart beat faster at the familiar scent of the palace corridors. Kaelen explored the room with open curiosity, touching the heavy tapestries and peering out the tall windows toward the gardens below. Davis lingered in the doorway, his wolf stirring restlessly inside him. The beast had grown louder since the border square, recognizing Lysa, sent the moment she had stepped close. It was the same gentle herbal warmth mixed with moonlight that had once soothed him after long hunts. Now it pulled at him with a longing that made his chest ache. He wanted to ask her everything, to hear every detail of the years he had stolen from her. Yet he held back, sensing that her silence carried more weight than any words he could offer. Later that night, after Kaelen had fallen asleep in the soft bed, Davis walked the shadowed halls alone. His steps carried him toward the restricted archives beneath the eastern tower, where ancient records lay sealed behind heavy doors. The guards stepped aside without question. Inside, the air was cool and dry, lined with shelves of leather-bound volumes and scrolls yellowed by time. He lit a single lantern and began searching, pulling down volumes that spoke of old bloodlines and forgotten prophecies. One dusty tome caught his eye, its cover etched with a faded silver wolf. He opened it carefully, and his breath caught. There on the brittle page was a drawing of a woman with silver-flecked eyes standing beneath. Moonlight, her wrist marked with the same delicate rune that had appeared on Lysa that stormy night. The text spoke of the ancient Luna blood, a lineage said to protect the kingdom's wolf magic. "Those who carry it are the true shield," he read aloud, his voice echoing softly. "When denied, the land itself begins to fade." The words settled heavily inside him. He remembered the failing harvests, the restless wolves in the training yards, the way the palace stones had seemed colder since her banishment. His wolf pressed forward again, urging him to connect the pieces. Davis turned another page and found a reference to silver-eyed heirs born only when the true bond is tested by betrayal. The realization struck him like a physical blow. He had not only rejected his mate, he had endangered the very kingdom he swore to protect. Regret layered deeper, now mixing with a growing curiosity that pulled him toward the truth he had ignored for so long. Meanwhile, in the council chamber, Varen paced before the long table, his face tight with controlled fury. The elders sat in uneasy silence, the coded raven message from the border still open before them. "This changes nothing," Varen hissed. "The boy is a complication, but we can still contain it. We will separate them quietly under the guise of royal protocol." The child will be examined by our healers, and the woman will be given private quarters far from the king. By morning we will have new documents ready claiming the child's eyes are merely a coincidence, or worse, a sign of forbidden magic." The elders nodded, though one younger advisor shifted uncomfortably. "The king has already seen them together," another elder warned. "His wolf recognizes her. We must move carefully." Davis returned to the quiet wing hours later, carrying the ancient tome under his arm. He found Lysa standing by the window gazing out at the moonlit gardens. She turned when he entered, her silver-flecked eyes meeting his with the same steady calm. Kaelen stirred in his sleep, murmuring about wolves in his dreams. Davis set the book on a low table and opened it to the page with the drawing. "This is you," he said quietly, "or someone like you. The old texts speak of a bloodline that keeps the kingdom's magic alive. I never knew. I let them convince me it was all deception." His voice cracked slightly, the layered regret pulling at every word. Curiosity burned in his gaze, now a desperate need to understand what he had almost destroyed. Lysa glanced at the page, her expression softening for the first time. She reached out and traced the rune with one finger. "I felt it the night Kaelen was born," she admitted, her voice soft. "A warmth that kept us safe when the world turned cold." She did not accuse him, but the quiet truth in her words deepened the ache in his chest. His wolf recognized the scent of her again, stronger now, filling the room with a low protective rumble only he could hear. The bond he had tried to break hummed between them, faint yet undeniable. Before either could speak further, the door opened without warning. 2 council guards entered, flanked by Varen himself. The chief advisor bowed stiffly, his smile thin. "Your Majesty, the council requests the boy be examined at once for his own safety. Ancient protocols demand it. We will take him to the healing wing while the woman rests." Davis' eyes narrowed. His wolf growled low and warning. This was no request. It was an attempt to separate them, to bury the truth before it could spread. Lysa stepped forward, placing herself between the guards and her sleeping son, her posture unyielding. Kaelen woke, then sensing the tension. He slipped from the bed and ran to his mother's side, his small hand reaching for hers. The moment his fingers touched her wrist, the silver mark flared to life, glowing brightly beneath her sleeve. A dormant rune awakened on her arm, shining with ancient light that filled the chamber like captured moonlight. The guards froze, Varen's face drained of color. The boy's touch had done what no healer or scroll could. The hidden power of the lost bloodline stirred openly, proving the text Davis had just read. The council's attempt to separate them had instead ignited the very secret they feared most. Davis stood taller, his voice carrying the full weight of command. "Leave them. No one touches my son or his mother without my order." The guards retreated, Varen following with a final glare that promised further shadows. As the door closed, Lysa looked down at the glowing rune on her arm, and then at Kaelen, whose silver eyes shone in response. Davis watched them, both the curiosity and regret twisting together into something new. The trails of forgotten blood had begun to surface, and the kingdom would never be the same. Dawn broke over the Silverfang palace with a pale light that did little to warm the stone halls. Davis stood on the balcony of the royal wing, his hands gripping the carved railing as he stared out across the kingdom. The fields that should have been golden with late harvest lay withered and gray under an unnatural frost. Trees that had stood for centuries now drooped, their leaves curling black at the edges. Even the wind carried a hollow note, as though the land itself had begun to forget how to breathe. His wolf paced inside him, restless, and pained, the beast sensing the same decay that had crept into every corner since the night he had banished Lysa. Servants moved through the corridors with hurried steps, their faces tight with worry. Reports arrived hourly from the outer packs. The western borders had gone silent. Messengers spoke of rival alphas gathering forces, drawn by the scent of weakness like wolves circling a wounded stag. One scout knelt before Davis in the war room, delivering the latest news with a trembling voice. "The Northern Ridge packs have sent envoys, Your Majesty. They claim the old magic is failing, and the throne no longer holds the land together. They speak of marching if no true Luna is named by the next full moon. Davis dismissed the scout with a nod, but inside his chest the weight of regret pressed harder. He had believed the council when they said banishing her would bring strength. Instead, the kingdom bled slowly from a wound he had inflicted himself. He turned to the ancient tome he had carried from the archives the night before and opened it again on the long table. The pages spoke clearly now in the cold morning light. The prophecy he had never been shown until yesterday lay before him in faded ink. When the true Luna of silver blood is denied, the land shall fade, and the air of moonlight shall be the only cure. The council had hidden this scroll for years, burning copies and twisting words to keep their control. Davis felt fury rise slow and deep. Varen and the elders had known. They had fed him lies about false pregnancies and dangerous bloodlines while the very ground beneath the throne cracked. He slammed the book shut, the sound echoing like thunder in the empty room. His wolf growled in agreement, the beast demanding justice for the mate and son it had recognized too late. In the quiet wing, Lysa sat with Kaelen by the window, watching the same fading fields. The boy leaned against her side, his small hand tracing patterns in the air, as though following invisible wolves. "Mother, the land looks sad," he said softly, "like it misses something it cannot find." She brushed his dark curls back and felt the silver mark on her wrist warm in response. She had not told him everything yet, but she sensed he already understood more than any child should. The palace felt both familiar and foreign to her now, the corridors echoing with memories of stolen moments with Davis and the sharp sting of the council's judgment. Yet she remained calm, her quiet strength the same shield that had carried her through exile. Kaelen needed her steady, not broken. A knock sounded at the door, and a young guard entered, his face pale and drawn. "Forgive the intrusion, my lady, but there has been an accident in the training yard." One of the king's personal guards collapsed during patrol. The healers cannot wake him. His breathing grows shallow, and the frost in his veins spreads. The king asks if you would come. Lysa rose without hesitation. She had healed strangers in the borderlands with nothing but herbs and instinct. Now something deeper stirred inside her, the ancient blood calling her forward. Kaelen squeezed her hand once before she left, promising to stay safe in the chamber. The training yard lay just beyond the eastern gates, where warriors sparred under gray skies. A small crowd had gathered around the fallen guard, a broad-shouldered man named Garrick who lay on a wool blanket, his skin tinged with unnatural ice. Davis knelt beside him, his jaw tight with frustration. The healers had tried every tonic and chant, yet the man's chest rose and fell in weak, shallow bursts. Davis looked up as Lysa approached, his eyes carrying the urgency of a king who saw his kingdom slipping away. "The land fails," he said quietly, "and now my strongest men fall with it. If the prophecy is true, then the cost of what I did reaches farther than I knew." Lysa knelt without a word, placing her hands lightly over the guard's chest. The silver mark on her wrist flared hot, and a faint glow began to spread from her palms. She closed her eyes, breathing slow and steady, letting the warmth of her bloodline flow outward. The crowd gasped as the frost on Garrick's skin receded inch by inch. Color returned to his face, and his breathing deepened into something steady and strong. For the first time in days, the man's eyes fluttered open, and he drew a full breath without pain. Lysa pulled her hands back, the glow fading, but not before every witness in the yard had seen the moonlight shimmer that came only from ancient Luna blood. Davis stared at her, his regret and awe twisting together. "You saved him when no one else could." The words carried across the yard, and the gathered warriors bowed their heads in silent respect. Yet Lysa felt the weight of new eyes upon her, the council's spies watching from the shadows. This small act of power had drawn the court's full attention, pulling back the veil she had kept hidden for so long. Whispers spread like fire through the palace corridors. The banished Omega held the old magic. The boy with silver eyes was no coincidence. The land itself had begun to answer her presence. Later that afternoon in the council chamber, Varen slammed his fist against the table. She must be contained before the rival packs learn of this. The prophecy links the true heir to survival, and now the entire court has seen her power. The elders nodded, their faces pale. One suggested drafting new accusations claiming forbidden charms. Another proposed separating the boy under royal decree. But Davis had already issued orders. No one touches them. The king's voice had carried finality when he spoke, and his wolf stood closer to the surface than ever, refusing to be silenced. Outside the palace walls, the first scouts from the rival packs appeared on the distant ridges, their banners snapping in the cold wind. They watched and waited, sensing the fracture in Silverfang's strength. The kingdom teetered now, the magic fading faster with every hour that passed without full restoration. Lysa stood on the balcony with Kaelen beside her, watching the same horizon. She had revealed only a fragment of her power to save one man, yet the cost was clear. The eyes of the court were upon her, and the danger that had driven the council for years now closed in from both inside the walls and beyond them. Davis joined them quietly, his presence heavy with the knowledge he had gained. The prophecy he had learned too late linked everything together, and the urgency of the fading land pressed against them all like a coming storm. The palace corridors hummed with tension as the rival scouts drew closer to the outer ridges. Lysa stood in the quiet wing with Kaelen at her side, watching the distant banners snap against the gray sky. The boy's silver eyes reflected the same worry she felt, yet there was a quiet steadiness in him that reminded her of the strength she had built in exile. She had revealed only a fragment of her power in the training yard to save the fallen guard, but the court had seen enough. Whispers now filled every hall, and the council's eyes watched her like hawks circling prey. Davis had ordered protection, yet she knew the elders would not stop until they silenced the truth. She turned from the window, her decision forming with the same quiet resolve that had carried her through the storm 6 years earlier. "I will not run again," she said softly to Kaelen. "Not this time. The land is fading, and the kingdom needs what we carry." The boy nodded, as though he had already heard the wolves in his dreams speak the same words. Lysa smoothed his dark curls and felt the silver mark on her wrist grow warmer. The ancient blood stirred inside her stronger, now calling her toward the council chamber, where Varen and the elders gathered in secret. She would confront them not as the banished Omega they had tried to erase, but as the woman who held the kingdom's future in her veins. Davis found her in the hallway moments later, his broad shoulders tense beneath the royal mantle. His wolf had grown louder since the training yard, pacing with a protective fury that matched the regret burning in his chest. "Lysa," he said, his voice low and urgent. "The scouts report the rival packs are preparing to test our borders. If the magic continues to fail, we may face open conflict before the next moon." He searched her face, the romantic tension between them thickening the air like the charge before lightning. She had never looked more powerful to him than in this moment, standing tall after everything he had taken from her. Yet he held back, sensing she needed no command from him now. "I know," she replied, meeting his gaze without hesitation. "The prophecy you found in the archives is clear. The true Luna's blood is the shield. I will not hide it any longer." She placed a hand on Kaelen's shoulder, and the three of them walked together toward the council chamber. Servants and guards parted for them, their eyes wide with a mix of awe and fear. Davis walked at her side, not as a king issuing orders, but as a man witnessing the strength he had once failed to see. The mate bond hummed between them deeper, now pulling at the edges of his control. He felt the pull of her presence like moonlight on water, steady and undeniable. For the first time he understood that her silence in the storm had not been weakness. It had been the choice of a woman who refused to beg for what should have been given freely. The heavy doors of the council chamber swung open as they entered. Varen stood at the head of the long table, his face pale with barely concealed alarm. The other elders rose in a rustle of robes, their expressions shifting from shock to calculated anger. "This is a private session, Your Majesty," Varen began, his voice smooth but strained. "Matters of state require careful discussion, without outside interference." Lysa stepped forward, her posture straight and unyielding. "There is no interference," she said, her tone calm, yet carrying the weight of ancient authority. Only truth. You have hidden the prophecies. You burned the scrolls that spoke of silver-eyed heirs and the fading land. You convinced the king that my child was a threat when he was the only hope. Kaelen stayed close to her side, his small hand in hers. The boy's silver eyes began to shimmer faintly at first, then brighter, as though answering her words. The air in the chamber grew warmer, the torches flickering, as if stirred by an unseen wind. Davis stood beside her, his presence a silent wall of support. He did not interrupt. Instead, he watched as the woman he had banished revealed the power he had once dismissed. His wolf pressed forward in approval, the beast recognizing the true Luna in a way the man had been too blind to see. Regret still lingered in his chest, but it mixed now with a profound respect that deepened the bond between them. Lysa's quiet strength had always been there, he realized. He had simply refused to honor it. Varen's hands tightened on the table. "This is madness," he hissed. "The woman is no Luna. She is a banished deceiver whose blood will bring ruin." He signaled to the guards at the doors, but before they could move, Lysa lifted her wrist. The silver mark flared to life, glowing with a pure moonlight radiance that filled the chamber. Runes awakened along her arm, ancient symbols that matched the drawings in the forgotten tome. The light spread outward, touching the stone walls, and the elders recoiled as if burned. Kaelen's eyes activated fully, then the silver in them shining like twin moons. The boy's small frame seemed to glow from within, confirming the bloodline in a way no document or testimony could deny. The council chamber held its breath. One elder dropped to his knees, the weight of the revelation too heavy to bear. Varen staggered back, his carefully built lies crumbling before the living proof. Lysa's voice remained steady as she addressed them all. "I could have fled again," she said. "I could have taken my son and left this kingdom to its fading. But I choose to stand. The land needs its shield, and the heir needs his rightful place." She turned to Davis, her eyes meeting his with a depth that sent a wave of romantic tension through the air. The bond sang between them, now clear and strong. He saw her not as the wounded Omega he had cast out, but as the equal who had risen in silence and now offered the kingdom a second chance. Davis stepped closer, his hand brushing hers in a gesture that carried more than words. The touch sent warmth through them, both the mate bond awakening fully in that moment. He felt her strength flow into him, steadying the restlessness of his wolf. "You are the shield," he murmured, his voice low enough for only her to hear. "I see it now. I see you." The words carried the weight of his regret and the promise of change. Empowerment filled Lysa's chest, not from victory over the council, but from the choice she had made to confront rather than hide. She had protected her son through years of exile, and now she protected the kingdom the same way, with quiet, unwavering power. Before anyone could speak further, a horn sounded from the outer walls, sharp and urgent. A guard burst into the chamber, his face flushed with alarm. "Rival forces have reached the gates, Your Majesty. They demand parley, claiming the throne has lost the old magic." Arrows fly, and the shield around the palace flickers. The attack had begun. The fading kingdom faced its greatest threat yet, and the choice Lysa had made now stood between survival and ruin. Davis turned to her, his eyes fierce with resolve. "The time for hiding is over," he said. "Together." She nodded once, her hands still linked with Kaelen's, as the silver in the boy's eyes continued to shine, confirming the bloodline that would either save them all or watch the kingdom fall. The rival attack pressed against the gates, forcing every soul within the palace to choose sides in the coming battle. The truth had awakened, and the land itself waited to see if the true Luna's choice would be enough. The full moon hung heavy and bright above the Silverfang palace, turning the sacred courtyard into a sea of silver light. Torches flickered along the stone walls, but their flames seemed dim compared to the glow that bathed every face gathered there. Davis had called the emergency assembly the moment the rival horns sounded at the gates. Nobles from every pack stood shoulder to shoulder, their cloaks bearing the colors of distant territories. Guards formed a wide circle, their hands resting on sword hilts, while scouts from the outer lands watched with wary eyes. The air carried the scent of pine and tension, and the distant clash of steel beyond the walls reminded everyone that the kingdom stood on the edge of war. Davis stood at the center of the raised platform, his tall frame outlined by moonlight. Lysa remained at his side, her dark cloak draped over her shoulders, and Kaelen held close between them. The boy's silver eyes reflected the moon like twin mirrors. The court had never seen such a gathering under these stars. Rival banners fluttered, just beyond the outer gates, their leaders demanding parley, yet the king had chosen this moment to face his own people first. Whispers rippled through the crowd. The banished Omega had returned. The child with the king's eyes stood beside her. And the land itself had begun to heal in small ways since her presence returned. Varen stepped forward from the line of elders, his robes heavy and his face tight with the final desperation of a man watching his power slip away. He raised his hands, calling for silence. "This gathering is a mistake, Your Majesty," he declared, his voice carrying across the stones. "The woman before you is no true Luna. She is the very deception we warned against 6 years ago. Her child carries cursed blood meant to fracture the throne. We have documents, ancient seals that prove her lineage is false." He gestured sharply to the guards who moved to seize Kaelen under the pretense of royal protection. "The boy must be examined at once before the rivals use this lie against us." Gasps rose from the nobles. Some elders nodded in agreement, their faces pale but determined. The council's final move hung in the air like a blade. Davis S. Wolf surged forward, a low growl rumbling in his chest that silenced half the courtyard. He stepped between the guards and his family, his hand resting lightly on Lysa's arm. "Enough," he said the single word, carrying the full weight of command. The guards froze. Varen's eyes widened, but he pressed on, his voice rising in pitch. "She will destroy us all if we allow this." The prophecy was clear. Deny the false blood, or watch the kingdom fall. Lysa lifted her chin, her gaze steady on the chief advisor. She did not raise her voice, yet every ear turned toward her. "You burned the true scrolls," she said quietly. "You whispered fear into the king's ear to keep your seats at this table. My blood was never the threat. Your lies were." As she spoke, the silver mark on her wrist ignited. The glow spread upward along her arms, revealing ancient runes that had lain dormant for years. They shone with pure moonlight, etching symbols older than the throne itself across her skin. The crowd drew a collective breath. The light grew brighter, bathing the entire courtyard in a soft radiance that chased away every shadow. Kaelen's eyes activated fully, then the silver in them flaring like the moon itself. He reached up and touched his mother's hand, and the runes pulsed in response. A wave of warmth rolled outward, touching the stone beneath their feet. The withered vines along the courtyard walls began to unfurl, green shoots appearing where frost had ruled only hours earlier. The land answered. Whispers turned to murmurs of awe. Warriors who had once watched her banishment now lowered their heads in respect. The nobles who had whispered judgments 6 years ago stood frozen, their faces pale with shock. Varen lunged forward in one last desperate act, drawing a hidden dagger from his sleeve. The blade gleamed with dark enchantment, a forbidden charm meant to silence the bloodline once and for all. He aimed for Kaelen, his face twisted with fury. "The boy is the end of us all," he shouted. "The council will not fall to a banished whore and her bastard heir." The words echoed like a death knell. Davis moved faster than thought, his powerful frame intercepting the advisor. He caught Varen's wrist in an iron grip, the dagger clattering to the stone. The chief advisor's eyes widened in terror as the king's wolf surged forward, fully visible in the glow of Lysa's runes. The beast's presence pressed against every mind in the courtyard, a wave of raw authority that forced Varen to his knees. The runes on Lysa's arms flared brighter. They lifted from her skin, hovering in the air for a heartbeat before settling into the very stones of the courtyard. Ancient wolf guardians etched in moonlight appeared along the walls, their eyes opening to stare down at the council. The truth stood revealed for every pack to witness. The child was no deception. The Omega had never been weak. She carried the shield the kingdom had lost the night she was sent into the storm. Satisfaction washed over the crowd like a tide. Those who had humiliated her years ago now felt the weight of their own blindness. Shock held the elders motionless as the final desperate move of their leader failed spectacularly. Varen slumped, broken, his power shattered in front of the entire court. Davis released the advisor and turned to face the gathering. His voice rang clear and strong across the moonlit stones. 6 years ago, I made the greatest mistake of my reign. I listened to fear instead of truth. I sent away the woman the moon goddess bound to me, and denied my own son his birthright. He paused, his gaze sweeping over every face. The land has faded because of my blindness. The magic has weakened because I let pride rule where love and trust should have stood. I stand before you now not as a king above reproach, but as a man who owes atonement. He dropped to one knee before Lysa, and Kaelen the Alpha King lowering himself before the woman he had once cast out. The courtyard fell silent. The gesture carried more weight than any decree. Regret and respect shone in his eyes as he looked up at her. Lysa, the choice is yours. I offer the throne, the bond, and my life to make right what I broke. The kingdom needs its true Luna. I need you. Lysa stood tall, the runes still glowing softly on her arms. Kaelen pressed close to her side, his small hand in hers. The mate bond between her and Davis sang openly, now a visible thread of silver light connecting them under the full moon. The crowd waited breathless. Satisfaction and hope mingled in the air, yet the final answer hung in the balance. Lysa's eyes met Davis' and in that moment the weight of every year of pain, every silent sacrifice, and every quiet strength she had carried pressed between them. The rivals still waited at the gates, the kingdom still teetered, but the public reversal had come. The truth had risen, and the woman once banished now held the heart of the realm in her hands. The moonlight in the sacred courtyard seemed to hold its breath as Lysa looked down at the kneeling king. Davis remained on one knee, his head bowed before her and their son. The runes on her arms still glowed softly, casting a gentle silver light across his face. The entire court stood motionless, every noble, every guard, every rival scout watching from the outer edges. The air felt alive with the same quiet power that had awakened the ancient guardians along the walls. Varen and the remaining elders knelt in defeat, their faces pale under the moon's witness. The dagger lay forgotten on the stone, a symbol of the lies that had finally shattered. Lysa's heart beat steady and strong. She felt the weight of 6 years of rain-soaked nights and hidden sacrifices, yet she also felt the warmth of Kaelen's small hand in hers. The boy looked up at her with those luminous silver eyes full of trust and quiet hope. She had not come back to the palace seeking revenge or easy forgiveness. She had returned because the land called to the blood in her veins, and because the child deserved to know his father without the shadow of deception. Now standing in the same moonlight that had once watched her banishment, she made her choice on her own terms. She reached down and placed her free hand lightly on Davis' shoulder. "Rise, my king," she said, her voice clear and calm, carrying across the courtyard. "You kneel before me not as a command, but as a man who has seen the truth. I accept your atonement, but I will not return as the Omega you once sent away. I return as the Luna the moon goddess always meant me to be. The title you stripped from me that night is mine again by right of blood and bond. Let the court hear it now before all packs. Restore it openly so no whisper of doubt remains." Davis rose slowly, his dark eyes meeting hers with a depth of regret and respect that made the mate bond between them shine brighter. He turned to the gathered nobles and raised his voice so every ear could hear. "By the power of the throne and the will of the old magic, I hereby restore Lysa as Luna of Silverfang. She is my fated mate and the mother of my heir Kaelen. Any who question her place question the land itself." The words echoed off the stone walls, and the runes on the guardians flared in agreement. A wave of warmth spread outward through the courtyard. The withered vines along the walls burst into full bloom, their leaves turning green and strong. The frost that had clung to the distant fields began to melt under the moonlight, as though the kingdom itself exhaled in relief. The nobles bowed low, their murmurs turning from shock to reverence. Rival scouts lowered their banners in respect, stepping back from the gates as the palace shield strengthened and glowed with renewed silver light. The threat of war faded in that moment, the land's magic answering the true Luna's presence. Whispers of hope rippled through the crowd. The harvest would return. The wolves would calm. The kingdom that had begun to fade was whole once more. Davis turned back to Lysa and Kaelen, his hand extending toward them, not in possession, but in offering. He knelt again, this time beside the boy, and looked into his son's eyes. "I was blind, Kaelen," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I missed your first breath, your first steps, and every night you called for a father who was not there. I cannot undo the years, but I can promise you this. You will never walk alone again." The boy studied him for a long moment, then stepped forward and placed his small hand on the king's shoulder. The silver in his eyes softened, and the mate bond between father and son awakened with a faint glow. Davis's wolf rumbled in quiet joy, the beast finally at peace. Lysa watched them, the ache in her chest easing into something warmer. She had forgiven in her own time, not because he demanded it, but because he had earned it through public truth and quiet change. "I do not return as your possession," she told him softly, so only he could hear. "I return as your equal. The bond we share will grow again, but only if you choose me each day as I choose you. No more counsels whispering fear. No more pride above truth." He nodded, his gaze steady and full of promise. "On your terms, Luna. Always." The court began to disperse under the moon's gentle light, servants carrying word to every corner of the kingdom. The healers reported that the fallen guard from the training yard had fully recovered, and the fields beyond the walls already showed new green shoots pushing through the soil. The ancient magic that had slept during her exile stirred fully awake, now flowing through the land like a river returning to its bed. Rival packs sent messengers of peace, their leaders acknowledging the true Luna's return and the strength it brought. Later that night, in the quiet gardens where they had once shared stolen moments, Lysa stood with Davis and Kaelen. The boy had fallen asleep in his father's arms, his head resting against the king's shoulder. Davis held him carefully, as though afraid the child might vanish again. Lysa walked beside them, her hand brushing Davis's free arm. The mate bond between them hummed steady and warm, no longer fractured but renewed. She felt the years of pain settle into memory, not forgotten, but no longer defining her. She had risen unseen and wounded, and now she stood respected, not because the throne demanded it, but because she had chosen her own path through the dark. Davis looked down at her, his voice low and full of the emotion he had held back for so long. "You were never weak, Lysa. I was the one who was blind. Thank you for giving me the chance to see." She smiled softly, the expression carrying the quiet hope that had sustained her through every lonely night. "We begin again," she said, "not as the people we were, but as the family we are meant to be. The land is healing. Our son is home, and the bond between us will grow in its own time." They stood together under the same moonlight that had once watched her walk into the storm. The palace glowed softly behind them, its stones warm with the restored magic. Kaelen stirred in his sleep, murmuring about wolves that no longer howled in sorrow but sang in welcome. Davis pulled Lysa closer, his arm around her shoulders, and she leaned into him, allowing the warmth of the moment to fill the last empty places in her heart. The kingdom lay peaceful beyond the walls, the crops stirring, the wolves calm, and the court finally silent in reverence. In that quiet garden under the moon's silver gaze, the rejected mate had become the heart of the realm. The Alpha King had learned the cost of pride and the gift of redemption. And the young heir, with eyes like moonlight, slept safely between the parents who had found their way back to one another. The story of the banished Luna did not end in sorrow or vengeance. It ended in earned trust, in a family reforged, and in the soft promise that even the deepest wounds could heal when truth and love were finally allowed to rise. The moonlight lingered a little longer, as if the moon goddess herself smiled down on the three figures standing together at last. The Silverfang kingdom was whole. Its true Luna had returned. and the future stretched before them bright and unbroken under the stars. Please check this part. Type OK if you want me to continue to the next part.